Edward Hewitt's Bivisible is almost more a concept than it is a fly. The idea behind the Bivisible is that the trout can see the darker colors better, and that we fishermen, anglers, can see the white better, the light colors better. So the idea of the Bivisible then is that it is visible to both the fish and the angler. The original Bivisible was a brown Bivisible. The back hackle was brown, the front hackle was white. I am tying a badger Bivisible. I'm using 2 badger hackle tips for the tail, the length of the shank. I'm tying them on a number 14 fine wire hook with black thread, and you can use either black or tan thread. Just wrap up over those to get them to lay on top of the hook shank. Clip out the butt ends. So badger in this case is not a mammal, but the color of a feather. It is a light, gingerish color feather with the dark stripe down the middle. That's called a badger feather or badger pattern. And in this case, the badger is not a whole lot different from the white that will be the front hackle, but it is one of the variations of the Bivisible that was tied during the 1930s particularly. So I have a hackle feather, a badger feather, that I have sized to the 14 hook. So sizing means that I am checking the length of the barbs compared to the distance from the point of the hook up to the shank. That is referred to either as the gape or the gap. And I want my hackle barbs to be 1 to 1.5 length, the distance of the gape. I'm peeling the barbs off of the feather. And tying that in, and notice that I've got a bare edge of that rachis on that feather, so that when I start to wrap, those barbs won't stick back towards the tail, over the tail. Wrap up over that stem or rachis, bring my thread out to the front, and I have tied it in with the shiny side forward. That will make the barbs lean backwards and make it easier to tie in the second color at the front, although that's not really the dry fly style. A real dry fly style would tie that feather in with the shiny side back so that those barbs lean forward. But because I'm covering the entire shank of the hook with the barbs, wrapping touching wraps. Some people call this palmering, although I generally think of palmering more as a spiral wrap rather than a touching wrap. But because it is covering the entire body, then it could be considered a palmer. I'm getting kind of short on my tip here, so I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. And by tying it with the shiny side back, those barbs are standing straight up or leaning back, and so I don't have to fight them when I'm up here in front to keep that eye clean. I'll just wrap underneath of that. Generally I wrap 3 over the top and 3 underneath, and then I will clip that out. I'd like to snap it, but the rachis on these feathers is pretty heavy. So this fly is really considered an attractor fly. It's not imitating any specific bug, but it could be imitating a number of different bugs. And now you notice that my white feather is not as white as it probably ought to be to get a good bivisible. But I'm going to peel off barbs here down at the base, the butt end of the rachis. Cut that short. Could even crew cut those little ends there. And then pull back on the body so I can have a cleaner tie-in of the front hackle, wrap up right behind the eye, and then I'm going to grab that feather with my hackle plier because it's fairly short and it's going to be harder to wrap just hanging onto the tip of the feather, and then wrap in front. And really the only place I can really see that I've got a white hackle in the front is right next to the shank of the hook, because the rachis on this feather is white. Again, the idea being that the angler will see the white better, whereas the fish will see the darker better. And because this is a badger bivisible, there's not a big difference between the badger and the white. It's pretty subtle. 3 wraps over the top. I'll pull back on that tip, wrap back under it, maybe even try to get up over it a little bit. Try not to trap barbs over the eye of the hook. I do have a couple there, and I'm going to take care of that in just a second. Find that tip now. And this one I can, I believe, just snap out because it's a pretty tender. If I can get just it and not the back hackle. There we go. So one of the techniques that I use to get those hackle barbs back off the eye is to take a half-hitch tool. In this case, it's just a ballpoint pen. And I can clip those out, and I may need to afterwards, but we'll see. And what I want to do is do a half hitch. So I'm going to take my ballpoint pen or half hitch tool, put 1 wrap of thread around it, set that over the eye of the hook, and then pull the thread off of the tip, and that pulls back the hackle barbs from off the eye. And then I'm going to do 2 double half hitches. So I'm wrapping my thread twice around my tool, pulling it off the tip of that out onto the shank, and I do have 1 barb there that is sticking out. See if I can get that to lean back this time. With my double half hitch, that worked fairly well. Then I'll just take my scissors and push it against the thread. That way I'm not cutting, and I won't cut my hackle barbs. Then I can take and just drop a single drop of diluted goop onto the head of that fly, and that will soak in. Keep that knot from coming untied. I'll put a recipe for the head goop in the description. Then, to make sure that my eye is clean, I'm going to take the tip of a hackle barb and pass it through the eye of the hook and make sure that it is clean and tip it ready.